Okay, wow. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this open house town hall meeting of the Larimer County Board of Commissioners. I'm Tom Donnelly. I'm the chairman of the board this year and commissioner for District 3, which includes Loveland, which is my hometown, Estes Park, and Berthoud. So it's good to be here in my district tonight. We want to welcome you all for coming. We have some coffee over there and some cookies there. Yes, look, there's a person taking part in partaking in some cookies. So join her. Don't be shy. Get up anytime if you need to get something to eat or something to drink. That's no problem. Joining me tonight, and you'll hear plenty from them, by the way. Steve Johnson, commissioner from District 2, and John Kafalis, our commissioner from District 1. We want to really take an opportunity to thank the city of Fort Collins, the folks over there at their cable access channel for actually recording this and broadcasting it live on, I guess on, where's it? On YouTube? Yeah. Oh, okay, so it's on YouTube. So you didn't have to come, I guess. You could still go home and watch it, I guess, if you want. But we have cookies. That's the difference. We're going to talk about, yes? Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're going to thank the town of Berthoud and the library for hosting us. Wonderful. We love this place. It's great to be here again. And there's a lot of folks here from Larimer County. Our staff folks will take a brief break at some point during the evening, and you can have a chance to interact with some of the folks who work here every day and talk about some of the things that might be very important to you. If you do sign up, this is Michelle Bird. She's our public affairs director at Larimer County, and she has a sign-up list. If you sign up to receive our monthly county newsletter via email, you will be entered into a drawing to win some Larimer County water bottle. So,
odds are good tonight.
Yeah, it's pretty good odds actually. They've never been better. This is not the Powerball. These are much better odds. So sign up with Michelle, and then after the break,
yeah, there's little sign-up cards in the back.
we'll do a drawing, and we'll give away a pristine Larimer County water bottle. Very valuable. What a nice prize. The board's going to talk about a number of issues tonight, but we really want to. Part of the reason for this meeting is twofold. Number one is so we can talk to you about what's going on in the county and give you an update, which we plan to do. But number two is to give folks a less formal venue to come and talk about what's on their minds with their Board of County Commissioners. And so we'll be sure to set aside plenty of time for Q&A at the end of this meeting. We'll try to be mindful of folks' time. We definitely will be out of here by 8:00. That's our promise to you.
They're kicking us out.
Oh, well, we'll be kicked out by 8:00. We'll try to be we'll be diligent and use your time as wisely as we can. I saw Dan Betts from U.S. Senator Cory Gardner's office is here, and I told Dan he could have 2 minutes to do a brief update if he'd like. So, Michelle, do you have a microphone for Dan?
I do.
Welcome, Dan.
All right. Thanks. So the big news is the Bureau of Land Management is moving its headquarters to Grand Junction, Colorado from Washington, D.C. And yeah, there'll be a little bit of an economic boomlet for the area, but really what it is it's about decision making. We feel with 90% of BLM land west of the Mississippi that it would be better for the decision makers to be here close to where their decisions are having an impact, where they can see the day-to-day effects of those decisions and see the people and know the local conditions better. And so we're really excited about that. And Senator Gardner played a big role in making that happen. And so thanks for giving me the opportunity for the update.
Wonderful. Thanks. So recently, the county has gone through a fairly extensive process to develop a new strategic plan. We had just finished our previous strategic plan, and so we've developed a new one, a 2019 to 2023 strategic plan. It has three main goals, kind of line up with three commissioners. And so maybe first off, we'll start and talk about each of our goals and what we hope the county can accomplish in the next 5 years. Maybe you want to do it backwards? Who's doing goal 3? Is that you?
I'm doing goal 3.
Why don't you go first, and we'll work it backwards so I don't talk the whole time.
So some of the goals are outward facing. They deal with how we deliver services directly in the community. But every one of our strategic plans, and this is our second one, has had an inward-facing goal, which is how we adopt management styles or management techniques within the county government to be more efficient and better serve our community. So my goal, goal 3, states that Larimer County government is ready to support the future service needs of our residents and visitors. So with this goal, and there's 5 objectives under this goal, we're looking at a long-range picture in the next 5-10 years. How will the service delivery needs of the county change over time? Obviously, with technology and with demographic changes, we need to be sensitive to that because our community's changing. So the objectives are, number 1, we're going to look at staff workplaces. There's been a lot of development among management thought about different work styles. Instead of having someone have their own office, that sits there 24/7 and maybe they're not in that office, we want to make better use of our facilities, be flexible with our office space, and evaluate how we can better use the office space. Because as the county grows, we know there's going to be more people here. We know by 2050, there's actually going to be 55% more people here. That's 150,000 more people in the next 30 years. That's equivalent to an entire new Fort Collins within our county. So we know that staff will need to adjust to that, and we want to make more efficient use of our buildings. The second is our workforce needs, and we know that as the demographics change in our community, different types of skills are important for our workforce that maybe they didn't have to have before. Use of computer technology was a good one that happened some time back. So we're going to look at the workforce skills that are necessary for a workforce that will serve the needs of our particular community. Service delivery methods, just as the workforce needs change, the way we deliver services will change. There have been a lot of change in the county clerk's office, for example, with motor vehicle registrations. In the old days, you went and sat there and waited for a long time. Now you can do that online. You can do that with kiosks. They have chat capabilities. They have booking appointments online through the phone. So we're looking at how do our service deliveries adapt to new technologies and new ways of serving folks better. The fourth one is data. The county collects an incredible amount of data, probably the biggest repository of data on people, on demographic changes in the community, lots of data about the health of the community, all of that. We want to see if there's a better way to use that data not just keep it in the silo where it was collected, but can that data be shared with other departments so that they can make better decisions and better serve people. The final objective is a little bit different than the previous 4. The county has an environmental science advisory board. We have an environmental policy. Environmental needs change in the community, technology changes, the science changes. We know more about the environment than we knew 10 years ago. So we want to use our internal folks to look at our environmental policies and the way our environmental plan and make sure that it's up to date with the things we're seeing in the community and what we're seeing, the growth in the science. So that is goal number 3, kind of an inward-facing goal, again, on how our management keeps up with trends in the future and does a better job of serving folks.
Does that conclude your?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
That's all I know.
Commissioner Cafalas.
Thank you, Commissioner Donnelly. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here on such an auspicious evening. It's a bit warm out there, if you haven't noticed. My name is John Cafalas. I am the newly elected, actually now it doesn't seem so new anymore, but I've been a county commissioner for District 1 for about 6.5 months, and I've enjoyed the honor and privilege to work with these folks. And as far as the strategic plan goes, a couple of things I would add is that we've been working on this since the beginning of the year. We have various objective teams, and we're making very good progress. The goal is, one of the short-term goals is to provide updates to the commissioners probably in August. And the goal is to actually complete and adopt the strategic plan, I think, sometime in the fall. And as has been indicated, there are 3 overarching goals. We just heard about goal number 3. Goal number 2 is the one that I am the executive sponsor. So we have goal stewards, which are county staff people. We have various folks, community folks and county folks who serve on these various objective teams. And then each of us is an executive sponsor, and our responsibility is to kind of work with everyone to make sure we're making progress and then ultimately sign off on things that we will present to the Board of County Commissioners. So goal number 2 basically deals with economic opportunities. Everyone in Larimer County has access to economic opportunities and a vibrant quality of life. We work together to remove barriers. So that's really focusing on, what can we do to help people have a better quality of life, have more access to economic and good jobs and so forth. There are 4 specific objectives that I'll highlight, and my hope is that you'll have, I won't get into too much detail, but my hope is that you'll have questions that we can do our best to answer when we open it up for some discussion. But the first one deals with community health, well-being, and resiliency. And more specifically, the idea is that by 2021, we would form an advisory group that ultimately would adopt a tool that would help us to measure community health, well-being, and resiliency. And right now, there's a lot of work being done to determine what might be an acceptable tool and what are the kinds of metrics we want to look at. And once we've adopted this tool, the idea is to implement strategies that long-term strategies that can help us to achieve improvements in community health well-being at least 2% annually based on the tool that we adopt. So that's the first objective within goal number 2, dealing with economic opportunity and quality of life. The second objective is having to do with workforce development. But in particular, we are looking at how can we contribute to the discussion and strategies for increasing opportunities for meaningful employment for persons with disabilities, and particularly persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So that's objective number 2, and the idea is to help address some of the high unemployment, underemployment of folks with disabilities. And part of that is to actually establish a pilot program within the county and look at how we can make progress, how we can serve as an example of hiring people. Am I entertaining my colleagues, or?
Yes.
Okay.
We were just reminding her to take a few photos for Facebook of the 3 of us.
Just take photos of those, Jim.
Not just you, not
So-
just any of us.
We have some interesting dynamics sometime. But let me just say, objective number 2, again, is workforce development, but again, focused on persons with disabilities. The third area, and a lot of this is coming from surveys that the county has done, community input and all of that, based on what are some really important issues that are impacting folks. But the third area deals with childcare. And I think those of you, especially those of you who may come from younger families, infants and toddlers, you're trying to engage in the workforce, whether it's a regular job, whether it's working out on a farm, it's not always easy to find affordable and quality childcare. So the third objective deals with childcare. And yesterday I was meeting with Heather O'Hare, who is the goal steward of this particular goal number 2, and she was giving me an update on the progress that is being made. We have this matrix, and we're looking at issues like access, affordability, and really trying to think outside the box in terms of how do we address a very complex issue. Working, for example, with the Fort Collins Chamber of Commerce. I did a shout out for you there, Kevin. There you go. But Fort Collins Chamber of Commerce and other chambers of commerce have recognized that if you want people to meaningfully engage in the workforce, we have to figure out creative ways and effective ways to deal with the child care issue. And to their credit and a collaborative effort, there's something called Talent 2.0, a regional workforce strategy, and there's some really important components of that deal with child care. Finally, the fourth objective has to do with affordable housing. Have you ascertained that that's an issue that affects a lot of folks in our communities? Affordable housing. And so we are looking at strategies to help address a variety, the continuum of housing, workforce housing, and looking at how do we elevate the role, what is the proper way to elevate the role of Larimer County to help address this issue. I think Commissioner Donnelly is going to be pulling me this way. So I'm done. Thank you very much for listening, and I really look forward to some dialogue and some of your questions about the strategic plan, and then we'll move on to the next topic, and then we'll open it up to what's on your minds.
Yeah, that's a great idea, John. So look, when I'm done, we can open up and talk
Please.
about our strategic plan goals. If anyone has any questions about that, then we'll move on a little deeper into our agenda. Yeah, my goal is goal number 1. There are four overarching objectives to this goal. The first actually began prior to 2019, In 2017, Larimer County well, before I start, I need to mention, Mayor, the Mayor Berthoud is here with us. Will Carspect, welcome, Mayor. You came in a couple minutes late, so I didn't introduce you originally. But please, go ahead and join us if you'd like. If not, snap a couple pictures of Kafalas so we can have them for the Facebook page. Otherwise, so anyway, welcome, Mayor. It's good to see you. And if you want to give an update at some point tonight, just let me know, and you're more than welcome to do so. In 2017, as I mentioned, Larimer County convened a regional transportation task force and really two entities, a policy group made up of elected officials, including your own mayor here, and representatives from all the cities and towns in Larimer County, and then a technical group which actually looked at the regional needs of our transportation network to try to see what the very most important roadways and corridors were as far as if we were going to prioritize and allocate funding for infrastructure expansion. That group has already been meeting for a year and a half. It has made a number of recommendations about really the highest need corridors and the highest need projects for the region as far as ensuring that folks can still get around the county even as population grows, as my colleagues have mentioned. It was a really collaborative effort, and it's come forward with a few recommendations that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But that was one of my objectives. Number two, I think everyone knows that our county landfill is well within the last decade of its life. It will be filled and not be able to accept any additional trash in the next 6 years or so, depending on volumes and things like that. So by the end of 2023, our solid waste master plan we will have per our solid waste master plan, we will have constructed a solid waste disposal center or landfill, and I don't know if that'll quite be by 2023, but it'll be very close to that. And so we've also developed a plan to divert a large amount of the waste that will be generated in our county. Things like lawn waste, a lot of food waste is going to be diverted. Construction materials, we're going to try to find ways to divert those. Those are probably some of they suck more space out of our landfill than almost anything, because typically they can't be compacted very much, concrete and wood and shingles and things like that. And a lot of those are actually are able to be reused for other purposes. So diverting trash is a big part of this future landfill implementation plan, but also is developing a new landfill. The county literally decades ago, bought a piece of ground north of Wellington with the sole idea of developing that in the future into a landfill. As you know, our current landfill sits right between Loveland and Fort Collins. It's very, very conveniently located, right? And it makes hauling trash not only convenient but relatively inexpensive, right? And so this is a little bit different animal. It's going to be a lot longer haul for those trucks. And so it's probably going to require a transfer station here in between at the old landfill site. So you're going to handle trash twice. You're going to haul it a lot further, and so it will be more expensive. And so developing strategies to divert part of our waste stream were important economically as well as environmentally. And so we're moving forward with a pretty innovative plan. And Commissioner Johnson deserves a lot of credit for this. He actually served as our Larimer County representative, and Mayor, you probably did too, on our, what do we call it? The solid waste, the waste shed policy group, which has been meeting for about 2 years now to really look at strategies to try to implement when we close down our landfill. And so that's coming forward. It's going really well, and this landfill serves a couple really important purposes. Number one is we'll still accept a small hauler. So if you want to haul your own pickup load of trash to our landfill, you can still do that. Most of the big landfill, the waste management landfill and all, you can't. They won't accept you like that. Or if they do, they'll charge you, 5 times more than what you'll charge to come in here for the inconvenience of it. And so that it serves as a great resource for our residents to be able to dispose of things. Also, it's kind of a landfill is a heavily, heavily regulated industry, right? And so there's not a market like you might expect a free market to exist in a lot of industries. It's so heavily regulated that there are very few landfills. And so most of them are owned by just a few companies own all the landfills pretty much in the United States. So our landfill, as actually an alternate site to dump, actually provides some relief for fees and helps keep fees, drives down fees throughout the region actually, and keeps trash hauling more affordable, and recycling services and all those other things much more affordable. So it's a great program. We look forward to moving it forward. The other two are very important, and they're core fundamental county services, but they're also a little bit boring. By the end of I'm just telling you, by the end of 2020, Larimer County will develop a comprehensive rural infrastructure strategy that will define the county's role, funding level, and targeting activities for a few things. Number one, to address the growing demand for street reconstruction. We don't do the county doesn't do street reconstruction in rural subdivisions. Does anybody here live in a rural subdivision in the county? No? Yeah, do you? And you don't get any county maintenance, I assume, on your road? Sometimes we do. Sometimes, depending on the age of the subdivision, we might do some surface maintenance like chip seal, but the county doesn't do reconstruction maintenance work, and that's becoming a problem as some of our older subdivisions, their roads age, and folks are kind of left going like, what are we going to do? Number two, there's been a call for the county to really investigate ways to enhance broadband services in the unincorporated areas of the county. We hear from folks all the time that internet connectivity is really difficult where they live, and particularly in some of the more rural areas in Larimer County. And we've actually heard that it's becoming an impediment to being able to sell your house. So many people work from home now. It's an essential, it's considered as essential as having a water supply for a lot of folks when they make a consideration of moving somewhere. So we're looking at that. Number three, improve long-term planning for water supply and wastewater treatment infrastructure in unincorporated Larimer County. That's obviously very important. If you look in down here, we actually do a pretty good job, and the county has been very proactive. There aren't a lot of rural subdivision residents down here, but there are a number of those really large rural subdivisions just south and southwest of Berthoud that kind of came into being in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when Boulder County wouldn't allow for rural subdivisions any longer. A lot of those developments moved into Larimer County. They're great. They were like executive homes for folks who worked at IBM and Ball and places like that. A lot of times they have some horses. They have great lifestyle types of developments down there. We've worked pretty hard and hand in hand with our county health department for a lot of those areas to really develop wastewater treatment systems so they can expel their wastewater in a manner that's safe. There's a lot of places in the county that still don't have that level of improvement. Red Feather Lakes is a great example of that, where there's kind of not any community-wide system to deal with wastewater, and I don't want to go into details, but it's kind of gross in some areas. And so so really looking at that more comprehensively, we think is important too, for those folks who live there and for the environment. And in the event that there was going to be any kind of future development there, I think that sometimes the lack of sewer and water is a real impediment to being able to do much as far as expanding communities. And so we know how important that is. Number four, by the end of 2020, Larimer County will complete a regional watershed management collaboration effort. That sounds governmental. To number one, improve mitigation efforts for flood-related hazards. Obviously, we all know that that's an important issue for the county. Are you looking at me? What, you trying to give me the hurry up? Okay. In response to our flooding that we've had here, to try to improve mitigation for flood, everyone understands that. Promote water sharing strategies to preserve agriculture and sustain water supplies. That's a great, everyone knows how important that is. There's a great example of it just down the road here. The county recently purchased, a couple years ago, an irrigated farm called Malchow Farms. We bought that property with open space sales tax dollars, which is paid by you folks. The farm cost $9 million. Of that, $6 million was irrigation water, right? And so, if you know anything about the economics of farming, there was no farmer who was going to come in and buy an irrigated farm for $9 million. The only people that would have bought it would have been either developers or municipalities who would have diverted either way. They would have diverted the water to a municipal use. The county purchased that farm. We kept that water in agriculture. And actually, we did something that was contemplated by the state water plan. We were the first in the state to actually do this. We created a water sharing agreement with the municipality. In dry years, they can divert some of that water to their municipal water use. In wet years, we'll keep that water on the land and produce irrigated crops on that ground. So it's a great innovative strategy. It's something we think could really be expanded and used throughout the county to really help with the preservation of some of our irrigated agriculture and keep some of our local food production in order. And then finally, this is kind of a specific one. There are a number of big dams Ashley will know this, just to the north of Wellington. They've been a cause of concern for the whole decade I've been in office. They were originally, there used to be significant flooding in Wellington in the Box Elder Basin up there. The NRCS went in and built these large dams in, I don't know when that was, Linda, 70s? Yeah, maybe early 80s. Anyway, the dams actually did a tremendous job of mitigating the flood effects, but they haven't had maintenance to the extent that the federal government thinks is sufficient. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that there's a danger to the public or anything like that, but you do need to do ongoing maintenance on these things as far as the federal government is concerned, or they can be stepped down to a lower level of hazard mitigation, and therefore would raise stormwater rates for people who might live downstream of them and things like that. So the county's going to work specifically to try to mitigate some of that risk. Not that it's a human risk, but just the risk of rising insurance rates and to make sure that they're well maintained. They need to be maintained. Everything does. Anything we build, a road or a building or your own home, that you have to do some maintenance, and so these dams are no exception. So those are my objectives. The board would entertain any questions you might have about our strategic plan goals at this time. Does anyone have a question? They were very exciting, I know.
Yeah, man, those
This is an energized
dams in
group.
Wellington.
You guys need some coffee. Yep. Oh, yes, sir.
Let me grab you a mic. You're welcome.
What are the highest priority highways to be developed with the available funds?
Yeah, can I talk about that in a few minutes? Sure. Okay, that's good. That's going to be a second part of our.
You'll have a whole thing about the
Yeah,
regional
we're going to have a
transportation
whole big
task
thing about
force.
it. Yeah. Yes. So, well, but I will tell you just a preview of coming attractions. The first $10 million from that that we've determined is in need should go towards I-25 because currently we have received funding to expand I-25 from Highway 14, which is Mulberry in North Fort Collins, to Highway 402, which is South Loveland. We want to make sure that the third lane extends all the way down to Longmont to tie into the third lane coming from Denver. And so Berthoud is in kind of the heart of that area. And so the first $10 million that we've identified in need for funding needs to go to try to, as a contribution, to try to bring state funding, as a local match, to bring state funding here to expand I-25 and to complete that expansion. So we don't have a bottleneck right in the middle of our expansion.
Do you have the 10 million already raised locally?
No, that's what I want to talk to you about. Yep, there you go. Man, you're a smart guy. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
I see you have kind of a framework of your strategic plan. Are there dates and times that are associated with that? And if it's obvious to everybody else, I apologize. But and then my second part of the question is what further community input are you looking for at this point? Okay.
I can answer the first one.
And every one of the goals is what we call a SMART goal, which is specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, realistic, and time-stamped. So every one of our goals will say by 2023, we will bring all of the bridges on the main line road system up to satisfactory standards. So every one of the goals has that time frame identified. They're all measurable. Our last strategic plan went from 2013 to 2018. Is that roughly correct? And the last thing we accomplished was the provision for a mental health facility. So every one of the goals has a special timestamp. And we meet quarterly and discuss every one of these goals with the staff person that's assigned to them, and they give us progress reports on how we're doing and how we're meeting those times. In the last strategic plan, the one goal that we got behind on was a transportation goal, because our engineering department was in the middle of the $150 million of rebuilding for flood projects. So we monitor the timeliness and the measurable outcomes of all of those goals, and we make adjustments as necessary.
Yeah. And maybe just to Steve, what, did you want to say something, Linda? This is our Larimer County Manager, Linda Hoffman. Go ahead, Linda. So why don't you stand up, though?
So the graphic you're referring to talks about the process the commissioners went through to gather public input in order to adopt these goals and objectives. So all of those dates would be in the past. So your next question about how to get involved as a citizen moving forward, these teams are formed, they are headed by staff members, but many of them have community members. And so if there's a particular goal that you're interested in, contact the respective commissioner or me, the county commissioner, and let me know, because many of those teams are either doing outreach as a specific part of their work, or they're looking for fresh blood to tap to, to participate in really guiding the work of that objective. So if you're interested in one of them, let either the respective commissioner know or let me know so that we can get on record with that and tap you in.
And Linda, do you have some cards?
Of course.
You can put some cards up there, back there. And I think John want to talk a little bit about this too.
If I may add, regarding this particular graphic, and thanks for your question. For example, a lot of this has happened in the last year or so. I believe the community survey which we conducted was we got the results in May of 2018. The leadership summit happened at the ranch in last summer or so. So some of this stuff has been happening, and that helped informed the 3 goals that you see before you and then the various objectives. And so since the beginning of this year, we've been working with the objective teams to come up with some more details and develop a work plan. The other thing I would like to add, if I may, is that we also, last night, the Board of Commissioners and the Larimer County Planning Commission, we adopted our comprehensive plan. And I don't know if Tom or anybody wants to speak to that. But the idea, at least as I understand it, is that these 3 goals in the strategic plan align in many ways with our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is an update of the 1997 master plan, and that essentially serves as a guiding framework for how we want to update our land use code. So once we start that process of updating our land use code, once we adopt this, there'll be continued opportunities for folks to engage and help inform us on how, to make sure we do things in an accountable way and in a way that benefits the community.
So one other thing I would share about community involvement, these are not just county government goals. My goals that are inward facing on the management largely are, although we have used private sector folks to kind of advise us and help us with that. But if you look at some of the other goals, for example, John's goal dealing with childcare, affordability of childcare, dealing with attainable housing, those are not things that the county government is going to come up with the silver bullet solution in the back room in the courthouse and then announce to the community that we've solved those problems, obviously. Those are very, very difficult issues. And what we're working on, our role in those issues is largely as a convener of bringing the municipalities together, bringing nonprofits together, bringing home builders together, bringing child care providers together, because we don't run a child care center. It's the provision by the marketplace, the employers are doing that. So on a lot of those goals, we actually play a small piece of the pie and bring the nonprofits, the faith community, the business community together to work on those goals with us. So they're not just the county's doing this somewhere and we'll come back later and tell you what we did. Not at all.
Yeah, so great minds think alike. I was actually going to make a very similar comment. During our last strategic plan, one of our goal areas was that we were going to work on strategies to provide senior transportation options for folks who might be aging in place in their homes. Sometimes getting to doctor's appointments, getting to the grocery store, even getting out to spend some time with your friends, which is really important for your mental health. Sometimes that's folks are really challenged to find the ability to do that when they get to a certain point in age. But they enjoy their independence. They want to stay in their home as long as they can. And maybe they have a good system of family that can help them. But every once in a while they just need that little extra help. That was one of our goals, and we did our work as far as doing a study, as far as finding some funding to figure out how to implement such a program. We actually kind of handed that off to the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is our regional air quality and transportation planning region here for Larimer and Will counties, and your mayor is actually a member of that as well. And the MPO has actually been working on that. It is such a great idea that actually it was started in Larimer County, that actually a number of Weld County communities have come to us and said, we'd like to be involved in this as well. And we think that's a great idea because truly, if you need to go to the hospital in Loveland and you live in Eaton, why wouldn't we want to help you try to find your ride there? I mean, that seems like we have a real regional economy. We have a regional road system. Folks here need to get around the region. They frankly don't give a damn where the county line is or even where their municipal boundaries are. And so we've actually had tremendous interest from Weld County communities to be a part of that. And so much so, I was going to mention that we actually are having a meeting on July 31st in Windsor at the Windsor Community Rec Center at 250 North 11th Street from 9 to 10:30. And who else is interested in it? The Colorado Department of Transportation. CDOT's Executive Director, Shoshana Liu, is actually going to join us at that meeting. It's such an exciting idea. And so that's something that started in our own strategic plan and has grown to be a real regional effort. The county incubated it and passed it off, and it's grown on its own. We still shepherd it. We're still involved, and we're very proud of it. But it's going to be something that hopefully the mayor will test. Will hopefully be of great use and benefit to all those folks in our region. And so that's what the strategic plan can do in the best circumstances. We don't think of it as well, 5 years have gone by, let's see you later, let's figure out something else we can talk about when we run for re-election the next time. We actually want to see these things implemented that can help the community for years to come. Very good. Yes, sir, Solomon.
On getting people transported from one place to another.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. You're on YouTube, man. You're on YouTube.
Okay. Have you talked to the people down in the San Luis Valley? Because they have a great transportation system down there in the San Luis Valley where they actually transport people that need to go to medical appointments. I know they'll transport them from, for example, down north to Colorado Springs to attend their doctors. And I was wondering if you guys have reached out to an organization that's already doing something like this, similar, and get some ideas from them to implement them here in Larimer County.
Solomon, do you know the specific organization in the San Luis Valley that does that? Because I know we have been looking about how we can improve what's referred to as non-emergency medical transportation, and we're trying to improve upon that. But it would be great to get a little bit more specific information, and both Linda and I are taking notes, and we can try to follow up.
San Luis Valley Development Resource Group, I believe, is the one that's responsible for that.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, and so thanks for that, Solomon. We'll look into that and we'll contact those folks. We have a number of great providers for seniors in the county already. Berthoud has their own, what do they call it, BATS? Berthoud area?
We also have...
Give the mayor the microphone.
We have BATS, which does limited, and we're trying to increase the routes, but we have RAFT, and they have their bus right outside that takes care of all the rural folks out here. And also, we'll travel into areas that we typically don't go, but we're trying to connect to different municipalities. And so we actually have Carrie Rollins and Michelle right here that are helping us with the transportation strategic plan. So we can really do that one call, one click, and bring all of our different transportation authorities together.
Sure. So that's really that says a lot. Thanks for saying that, Mayor. So Berthoud has a service that's in town. They have a rural service that's separate from that, and sometimes they don't know where their routes are kind of they don't always go everywhere, and they don't always come back from everywhere. And so having this one phone number or one website where you can go and you can work with a number of providers, because there's literally dozens of them throughout the county. Every little senior center, a lot of communities, they all have their own little services. And so giving that resource to people in one place, I mean, it's not necessarily a ride program, but more of a resource to find a ride, to help
And
people find
I
a
think
ride.
that's,
One of the things that they've done in San Luis Valley.
He's loud though.
He
I don't.
is, but he still needs
He's
to-
remarkably loud. mean, that's-
Retired Marine. Hoorah!
I know he is a Marine. I know.
One of the things they've also done in San Luis Valley is they've actually contracted with the cab service to use the cab service as part of that transportation. So just another
Yep.
thought to
Absolutely.
think about.
Yep, absolutely. Come to our meeting. You should come to our meeting. Yeah, we would like that, something like that. Yes,
Let me know when.
Michelle, over here.
Such a small room.
The Environmental Advisory Board, is that something that exists or will come into existence? I'm curious about it because one of my issues is our air quality. I love this northern Colorado scene and the county. Everything is perfect about it except our air quality is, I think there's a lot of facts that show that it pretty much stinks. And I'm curious about the ability for the advisory board or the county to maybe work on an intergovernmental agreement or something with Weld County, because from my research, it looks like a lot of that bad air quality is coming straight over from wells and drilling in Weld County. And it's affecting us. So I wonder if there's been discussion of that or will be.
I can speak a little bit about
I
that.
can talk about it too, whatever.
Well, so the first part of your question was about the Environmental Advisory Board. So one of our boards is the Environmental and Science Advisory Board. It's in existence. I actually serve as the liaison, the commissioner liaison to that board, and it's made up of people who primarily have a science background. And for example, one of the 15 members of the Oil and Gas Task Force is a member of the Environmental and Science Advisory Board. So that does exist, and basically what they work on are things that we direct them to work on. They come back and make recommendations. And usually we develop a work plan at the beginning of the year, and we prioritize those issues. So one of those issues relates to the oil and gas, the work we're doing to develop recommendations that might, inform regulations, because the county, Larimer County, currently does not have any regulations regarding oil and gas development, and they've worked on other projects, but that does exist. And as far as asking them to work on some kind of intergovernmental agreement or something with Weld County as far as air quality, I know that earlier in the year, one of the presentations that we had was from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and they presented some interesting data regarding air quality issues and ozone levels and how we've been, we've basically, our air quality has not been great in some of these really hot summer days. But they showed how in Larimer County, a lot of the sources of the ozone, the components that make up ozone are actually are transportation related. In Weld County, a lot of that is oil and gas related.
Yeah, and maybe just one other thing about air quality and the work that we do. For the last 10 and a half years, I've been Larimer County's representative on the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization, which, as I mentioned a few moments ago, is not only our lead transportation planning entity here in Larimer County, or in Larimer and Weld County in northern Colorado, but also our lead air quality planning agency. And I've served on the executive committee of that body for 7 years, I believe, and I've served as chairman for 3 years. We have worked with the state on the statewide implementation plan to deal with air quality issues. The mayor actually is also on that council with me. When strategies have been moved forward, we have worked collaboratively with the state health department to try on an implementation strategy. Within the last 5 or 6 years, there were pretty significant additional rules on tank control measures in Weld County, well, for oil and gas, but it primarily impacted Weld County because a lot of the emissions are actually created not necessarily from wells, but from controls on the existing tank systems that might vent gases and things like that. And so part of those rules were to try to limit that and to try to capture those gases on tanks. Also, vehicle emissions. If you notice, in the last 6 years or something like that, or 8 years, we've gone back into the tailpipe emissions testing program here in portions of the North Front Range area. So, yeah, we work on those plans, and we work on different strategies to try to meet them. It's not any one thing. There's not any silver bullet to really improve air quality. And frankly, a lot of the emissions and a lot of the pollution that we receive inside this airshed comes from sources outside of the airshed, right? We can get emissions from China, from Russia. If there's a forest fire somewhere in Washington State, it'll impact our air quality here significantly. In fact, we have actually contacted the state health department and asked them to not include days when we had wildfires and things like that in our data collection, because it negatively impacts our own air quality readings, and we don't want to take credit for sources that were not inside our region, right? And so there's a lot of factors that impact that, and so but we do work on that. We work on that. Yeah, I'm hurrying. It's a complicated issue. Okay.
So is it improving? I mean, with all
Well,
this work, it sounds like great work, but
Yeah,
it's still
well,
getting bad
I'll tell you
grades.
what. Well, yeah, it is improving. But you know what happens is that the standard continually lowered, right?
We had a number of.
There was a
the ozone levels.
it was lowered by the Bush administration. It was lowered again by the Obama administration. So we won't reach attainment, not because we haven't worked on air quality, but a couple factors. Number one, population growth. But number two, the standard keeps being decreased. Yeah. And so, if you look at Colorado, I want the cleanest air we can have. I love being outside. I have small kids. I want us to be a great place to live. I look at Colorado in the 70s with the smog and the brown cloud over Denver. I mean, you can tangibly see that has improved, right? You can see improvement there. Could we still improve more? Of course we can. We always will. We'll always strive to do that. But at the same time, yeah, it's challenging, and with a state with population that's increasing and with an ever decreasing standard, right? And so, yeah, we keep working. So that's my take. Others might have a different idea. Yeah. Another question, or is that it? To move on to our next topic. Okay. So, do you want to do a little overview of and I asked Jennifer, she might want to talk about our facilities master plan. Do you want to talk about our transportation plan at all, Linda, so people don't have to listen to me? I tend to go on and on.
So maybe.
Yeah, or do you want to?
Maybe I can do a little bit of an introduction of these two next topics that we're going to talk about. In our citizen surveys, one of the biggest concerns we've heard from citizens is, okay, we know this area is going to grow. And as our area grows, how are we going to deal with the increased traffic congestion on the one hand? On the other hand, how are we going to make sure that the county is positioned over the next 20, 30 years to be able to deliver quality services that are important to people? So we've looked at those two things. It's how will we deal with growth and maintain our quality of life? So under the leadership of the county manager, she has directed staff and come up with two big plans that we never had really in the whole time that I've been involved with the county. And one of those plans was a transportation plan, and Tom mentioned this a little bit. In meeting in conjunction with our other partners, our municipal partners, the Front Range Air Transportation Group, we need to identify the priority projects. We need to identify what's going to happen with our transportation plan. As more people move here, the roads will get more congested. What roads are going to be the most congested, and how can we get ahead of that curve? So that's been the transportation part of it. The second part of it is we've looked at the county's facilities. The county has a number of facilities, buildings that deliver services. Our Veterans Service Office has seen a tremendous amount of growth. For example, our Human Service Office has seen a tremendous growth, and with population, those facilities need to meet the needs of our community, right? And if you think you're just talking about facilities, and that sounds boring, it's county buildings, how boring is that? But facilities really are about policies, are about how we serve citizens. Let me give you one little example, is the alternative sentencing unit building. When Tom and I took office, we didn't have an alternative sentencing unit. If we had a person that was through the judicial system, maybe not really violent offender, they had to go to the county jail because we didn't have alternative programs. So now we have an alternative sentencing unit, which we built right next to the jail, about $13 million, paid for it with cash, didn't borrow, no debt. And a judge can sentence a person, if they're appropriate, to the alternative sentencing unit. In some cases, they spend the night there, they go out during the day, they work their job, and they come back in and do the rest of their time at night. What that does is, it's much less expensive. The person can keep their job in many cases, continue to support their family, so their family doesn't have to go on public assistance. So you may think you're talking about a facility as a building, but it means a real difference in how you can deliver services and how you can have good policies. So we have a facilities master plan that looks in the next 20, 30, 40 years as we grow. How are we going to meet that growth? How are we going to stay ahead of it? So that's kind of what we're looking at in the transportation area and in our ability to deliver service. These two plans are finished now. That's the easy part, right? The hard part's how do you pay for all that? Oftentimes the needs are a lot more than the revenue than you have because you're dealing with things in the future. And the future people aren't here paying taxes yet. So how do we get ready for that? So that's going to be our next topic on how we stay ahead of the growth that we know that's coming. That was the intro.
Oh,
Is Linda going to?
do you want to talk at all, or do you just want me to talk more?
Can we vote on that?
Do you want to say a few words, Linda, or Jennifer? You go ahead.
So, thank you, Commissioner, for the kind offer.
You're very welcome.
Here's the Reader's Digest version.
I wouldn't give that.
So, we've worked a long time with with two levels of transportation groups. One, a bunch of technical engineers who have done incredible work, and the more I learn about what they've done, the more impressed by it I am. And oh my gosh, is it detailed. And then those recommendations went up to a policy level group that was made up of representatives from each of the 8 municipalities in Larimer County, a county commissioner, the chambers of commerce were there, the MPO was there, CDOT was there, all the transportation players were there. And they came up with this list top to bottom of the most important projects. And what they did was they said, well, there are really only two ways to fund things, property tax and sales tax. And we don't think property tax is going to be very popular, so let's run the numbers on the assumption that it's sales tax. And let's see how far down the list we can get for, say, a 0.15 tax, meaning 15 cents on $100, or let's look at 25 cents on $100, and let's see how far down that list we can get. So they did that work, but way back at the beginning, they decided that they didn't want to include transit projects. And now we're realizing that more and more needs are things like we were talking about tonight, one call, one click. How do we get people who don't want to drive cars the right facilities to do other things? So now we're looking at rolling transit and non-vehicular transportation into that mix. Meanwhile, we have this set of service centers, or where we need to deliver services, like more alternative sentencing beds, more community corrections beds, a centralized service center for human services, because right now that's the most vulnerable population. And we've got them going all over town if they're involved in maybe food stamps and child protection, and with the workforce center trying to secure employment. And we would like for them to go to one place. So we're looking at a human services consolidated center, and we need to improve our Veterans Services Center. We do a great job with what we have, but they really need a better place to deliver those services.
Solomon could probably attest to that at some point. Do you ever interact with those veteran service?
I do attend, I do go to the Veteran Services and the VA, for example. I have an appointment next week for my annual checkup with them and stuff. I don't do as much as others because I have pretty good insurance. but I know a lot of veterans because I'm with the Marine Corps League, and we do discuss, some of the things that's going on with the VA. So if you ever want to get some more input on the veterans stuff and from some of our veterans, we have some key people that would be happy to participate.
Great, thanks.
I just volunteered them.
So, and the last thing that we know we need is every time the district attorney shows us a chart of the rise in felony filings, and every time Denver assigns us a new district judge, we have to provide courtroom space, and we're out of courtroom space. So someplace we have to increase courtroom space, and we'd sure like to do it on our existing facility by expanding the Justice Center in downtown Fort Collins. So what we're looking at is we're looking at a 0.5-cent tax for 20 years. And what that would do is maybe if we're looking at this whole half-penny pie, we could slice off, the first thing, we'd slice off about 35% to build all those facilities and services centers. And then we'd take the first $10 million and put it toward I-25. And then we could use about 45% of the whole pie on a collection of roadway projects, and Tom has a list here. And then the last 20% would go to fund transit. And at first we thought that transit was only going to be embraced by a couple of our largest cities. And what we're finding is that most of the smaller communities, Wellington really wants a line between Wellington and Fort Collins. When we talked to the Berthoud Council the other night, they're looking at things like, wouldn't it be great if we had better bike lanes on some of the roads up to Carter Lake? So we think that there is interest in facilities beyond just basic roads. And so that's kind of where we're going. I'm being vague a little bit because it's still quite malleable. We are working hard to bring all of our 8 municipal partners and the private sector that is very involved in transportation issues, all in support of the same proposal. You can imagine when you get that many people in a room, they have different ideas about things. So we're still working on that, but you could see that as soon as the November ballot.
So we'll take some questions. Solomon, do you have a question?
Just a quick question on the tax. You were talking about a 20-year, taxing that half a penny for 20 years. Okay, is the language going to be written that actually after 20 years that tax goes away? I've seen too many temporary taxes, like for example the food tax in Loveland was a temporary tax and is still in place today. So would that actually come up? Would it actually come off the books in 20 years?
Well, it's sad for me to acknowledge this, but I won't be in office in 20 years. I know it breaks everyone's heart here. A tax can always be extended. That's what's happened in Loveland. But our goal is to put a list of projects together that can be completed within the 20-year window and paid for in the 20-year window. What folks in this community would choose to do in the future would be up to them. It's interesting, and I'm gonna mention this.
End date.
Yes, it will have a specific end date. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. But also, Larimer County does not charge sales tax on food or prescription drugs. So we're a little different than most municipalities in that regard. So we do not charge sales tax on any food for human or for in-home consumption. So anything you buy at the grocery store, we don't typically charge sales tax on that. So we're a little different than the municipalities. And I want to share one.
Two sales taxes early.
Why don't you mention that in just a second?
Okay.
You can say something.
All right.
You can get up. I just want to tell you.
You're doing such a good
I didn't
job.
know, but I want to give you one piece of information. I think it's really telling, and I think everybody always says, another tax, right? They've grown, and so. But I want to give you just a little bit of information, just to help you maybe understand where we're coming from. We looked at 6 corridors: I-25. U.S. Highway 34 in Loveland, Highway 287, which goes through north-south through all of our communities here, State Highway 14, which is Mulberry and North Fort Collins, State Highway 402 and its extension, which is on the south end of Loveland, and then Larimer County Road 17, which the mayor calls Berthoud Parkway. We call Larimer County 17. Loveland calls Taft, and Fort Collins called Shields. Everybody has a different name for it. That's confusing. We looked at those 6 corridors, and by 2045, VMT, which is vehicle miles traveled, it's trips basically, on those 6 corridors by 2045 will increase 70%. If we do nothing to improve capacity of those corridors, hours of delay will increase by 673%. So you won't be coming to this meeting to meet with the Board of County Commissioners. You'll be sitting in traffic by 2045. And so when we learned that, we knew that something needed to be done. And it has to be done sooner rather than later. The Board of County Commissioners, as John mentioned earlier, we see ourselves as regional conveners of big issues. We try to take on big issues that will impact our community in the future. And we try to pass this on as a better place than or at least as good of a place as how we received it. And so this goal is very personal to us and how the county provides service, but also in how people are able to continue to live their lives here and get around, get to work. And everybody, when we came to Berthoud Town Board, I'll tell you, those guys are very regionally minded. And that's been my understanding or my discovery as I've met with the smaller communities in Larimer County. I think over 90% of the folks in Berthoud leave town every single day for work, right? And so they really understand the regional needs of our road system, probably more than folks in Fort Collins. By the way, 50% of the people in Fort Collins leave Fort Collins every day for work. And so it doesn't matter really where you go. There's tremendous numbers of folks who are going somewhere else than where they live to work. They go out to recreate. They go shopping in different places. They take their kids to different activities. And so we really feel strongly that this is something that really the county should be leaders on. It's always an uphill battle when you propose a tax. We think these are laudable projects and goals for our communities to really undertake, and we think we're the ones to get it done. And so I know we're going to take a break, and we want to give you a chance to sign up for the water bottle giveaway. I'm going to give that away at the end of our break. And so so if you want to ask a question with regards to what we've just talked about, the transportation, regional transportation program, our facilities, or any tax-related questions, we'll take those right after the break. And we're going to break until, how about 7:15? Then we'll come back for the good of the order. What's that? Oh, there's a restroom back there. For the good of the order, we'll take your questions about anything you want to talk about. 7:15. So let's take a short break. Sign up, and you can be entered in the drawing for the big water bottle prize. All right.
Then we should let Will talk.
Oh, great. Okay. Thanks for bearing with us. We're back on the air. We just had a nice break, and we're getting ready to do a prize giveaway. Commissioner Johnson has a beautiful Liberty Bottles Larimer County water bottle that we're going to give away here in a moment. And I guess Commissioner Falls is not going to draw for it because he's not up here. Do you want to draw? I'm going to let Commissioner Johnson draw. Do you want to draw, Commissioner?
Okay, sure.
Okay, I'm going to hold it. Commissioner Johnson is going to draw a winner of this major award.
The winner is Ashley.
Oh, yay! There you go.
Congratulations. Yay.
The rest of you are now our victims. You're going to receive emails from the
You
county.
should let the mayor talk.
Just one.
No, we want our cards back.
No.
Mayor, would you like to make any kind of update, a brief update about what's going on in the town of Berthoud? Why don't you come up and join us?
Please.
Where's the microphone? How do you turn this on?
It's on.
Okay,
Thanks a lot.
sure.
I do apologize for being late. We have a Native American group in town, called the TB Raisers over at the observatory. So tomorrow night they'll be leaving and going to Loveland. But anyways, it's probably, if I look like a lobster, that's where I was at all day. So pleasure having you guys here too. I do get to serve with Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Donnelly on a couple boards, and it's really special, especially having you guys as chairs. Commissioner Donnelly's ability to bring kind of two opposing ideologies together sometimes is really impressive, and I get to observe that, and hopefully I can do that one
I
day.
unify everyone in hating me. That's usually what I do.
We just got through our retreat with the town of Berthoud, and I don't see any other board members, so I might be a little more honest, but I didn't get all my priorities in there, but we did give staff some more space. We'll be pushing for a rec center,
Cool.
some kind of plan for that. And one thing I'm really excited about is an open space program with the town of Berthoud, which we've given up on a better part of 10 years. And now we're really reopening that, as well as some development controls and design controls, especially with our commercial. A lot of people didn't like how the O'Reillys turned out and some other things. So hopefully going forward, we'll have better looking buildings. And I think that's a really good thing, especially for an old town like ours. We can keep it together. Let's see here. That's really all I have. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing here. There's a quote I like, and it's it goes, "For those that wish to oppress, the library is the most dangerous place in town." And so we're here at our Berthoud Library, and I remember being here as a kid for the grand opening. And as you can see, it might be a little small for some of you, even though we have the air conditioning going on, it's getting a little hot. So I did want to bring up that the library is really going to be trying for a tax increase of their own, looking like April. I don't know about the board, but I personally will support that. Being some other libraries, Estes, Loveland, and Fort Collins, there's a lot of work we can do for the youth here. Everyone, but youth excites me. So good luck to you guys, and I hope we can work something out in time. Thanks.
District, or does the town
We
board
do,
fund
yeah.
that
They used to be
as
a part
well?
of the town, and then
Okay.
they peeled off
Okay.
for the better, and so we can have some more leverage on them. So I'm happy for that. But.
And sales tax collections are very strong in town of Berthoud better than they have been in a long time. You
Well,
guys
yeah,
are-
we have
you're
more
doing-
growth. A lot of gas stations, but they do bring in money. So more growth than we've had in the last decade or so. Really, we've doubled our population since I've been in office.
Wow.
Started at about 5,200, and now we really don't know where we're at. We're somewhere between 10 and 11,000. And we have some to go, and I know that's a real hot topic. What we can control is how they look, especially with our development impact fees, and we're really working hard on that. So I know there's some mixed feelings on that, and I think we have a really good board that's really trying to hammer down on making sure that development pays for itself. And for those of you wishing for this to end, I can say that we're getting to the point that most of our annexed lands are under some form of development in town or around town. Of course, we have a area out by I-25, which is similar in acreage to the town of Berthoud, and we have nothing but a love stop there. But hopefully, we can have some more development guidelines out there too. So we'll have two different towns, both called the town of Berthoud, and I look forward to making sure we can all work together.
Mayor of both.
Yeah.
And one other thing that the mayor I'd mention is we talked a lot about housing affordability and attainable housing for young families. Berthoud has actually done some really creative stuff on that front. And if you go home tonight on Berthoud Parkway,
Right.
Larimer County Road 17, or Taft, or Shields, whatever you call it. Just north of the intersection at 287 there, you'll see some new single-family homes being constructed in Berthoud that are ranging, I think, from like 230 to...
They're at 260 now,
Yeah.
and they go up to about 300,000, but really, really good for the area. It was a former mayor that started this new firm, and he developed the designs. He swears not to take more than a 10% profit, which is incredible. We worked out a design fee to include these houses, and now we have the state legislator coming down to kind of look at how we're doing things and expand that idea. State tax credits are getting more rare, harder to apply for, so the more companies that we can have that kind of takes this program, the better off we all are. So they're smaller houses, they're not tiny homes. I have a 1904 home in town, and these are the exact same size, so it's kind of how we used to build homes we're going back to. So,
Square footage average?
1,000, actually, I think they're all in that area.
1,000,
so,
1,200, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So they're in Prairie Star, going past, go past the 287 interchange. Look to your right, and they're the only colorful homes in that whole area, so you can see them from a long distance. But yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, good. Well done,
Thanks.
Mayor. It's great.
Thank y'all.
Great work. And we talked about this during our strategic plan, but I want to reemphasize this. Our county is getting much older. By what year, 2025? 1 in 4 people in this county is going to be 60 or older, right, Linda?
Well, that's not very old.
That doesn't seem very old to her.
Hey, what are you trying to say?
No, I'm not. We all look great, but no, but the county is getting older, and we have a pretty extensive system here of schools and homes and things like that, and we need to be replicating ourselves. We need to be bringing young families into our communities, and so kudos to Berthoud for.
Sure, I forgot to mention
Oh.
it to repeat it, but all right.
Come on up, Mayor. Look at this
You
guy.
know this. I have the same rules in our.
What a
on our town
politician.
board,
What a
but you gotta have
politician.
microphone.
He never stops talking.
Absolutely.
There you go.
You gotta shut me up. Every one of those homes but one is first-time home buyers. So
Yeah.
it's bringing in young families and young couples that would otherwise not be able to be in the region. Recently, it's 2 teachers that told the previous mayor basically that they were going to leave the state if it wasn't for our homes. So
There you go.
really great. Thanks.
And we have a very personal vested interest in that, right? Larimer County, we employ a lot of folks and young folks, and if they all have to live in Weld County or further, it's not going to take a long time before they start looking for a job closer to home. And who wouldn't if they have kids and they want to be with their families and things like that? And so we have a vested interest in making sure that is accomplished too on this front here in Larimer County. So kudos, Mayor, for good work by your town board. And the mayor is actually like political royalty, right? You're like because your dad was actually the mayor of Berthoud too. So it's like a Berthoud dynasty.
Yeah. You can tell him that he wrote the initiative that's coming to us, so or it's already came to us. So it's a little odd when you're staring at your dad at the other side of the podium. His dad was actually the author of a citizens initiative that's going to be on the ballot because he didn't like the way his son was governing the city. So it's gonna be a fun time at Thanksgiving this year. But okay. All right. So we want to talk about our proposals or anything that's on your mind. We will answer any question, literally any question, for the good of the order. So who would like to start? Yes, sir.
Where would you go as a county official to see the sales tax impact of the golf tournament recently?
Where would you go to see the sales
If you
tax?
wanted to see across Loveland and Berthoud and southern Larimer County where that money was spent in terms of sales tax, where would you go? State Department, revenue?
Yeah. So most municipalities collect their own sales tax and do their own sales tax reporting. I don't know if I just turned this off, Michelle. I may have. I don't know if I did. But the county, the State Department of Revenue collects sales tax for the county and remits that to us quarterly typically. And so it will take a few months, but there's probably an opportunity for us to try to figure out what that generation really looked like, from hotel room stays and maybe changes in restaurants and some of that stuff. Yeah, we can probably find that data, but it may be 3 or 4 months from now, Yes?
You did have a question earlier that you promised to answer.
I know, but I talked to him. But I did.
No, but we
That
talked about
doesn't
it.
mean the rest of the audience does.
Okay, so do you want to ask another question, sir?
No, not about the highways.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question? I'll talk about it in a little bit. Yes, ma'am. I want to give her a chance. I know she's going to ask a question.
I would like to hear a little bit about the Oil and Gas Task Force. I'm a member of League of Women Voters, and so I was able to read the questions that League of Women Voters brought up about the selection of that task force. And I've seen some scuttle about it in social media, and I'm just wondering if I did read in the paper that it was a public meeting and people should have known, but no one I knew of the selection process. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that and if the commissioners are doing anything about this or thoughts on that issue.
Very good. Thank you. You guys want to talk? Or you just want me to? Go ahead.
So what we did is we had, I think, over 100 applicants for the Oil and Gas Task Force. Was open to everybody, pretty well publicized. And what we did was we knew that we weren't going to be able to interview everybody. So we wanted to treat everybody equally. So we provided a list of 10 or 15 questions, I think, that everybody answered. And those questions for the people that were appointed are available on our website. There's now a website for the Oil and Gas Task Force. And we each individually looked over those questions, and what I looked for was people that expressed a desire to see, that could demonstrate that they could see both sides of the issue, that said, you know, that weren't all, there shouldn't be any regulation or we should have a total ban. I didn't want to see anybody from that extreme. I wanted to see people who said, I believe in reasonable regulations. I will listen to both sides and I will believe in reasonable regulations. So we each individually ranked people based on what we thought, all three of us thought independently, of the answers to those questions and gave that to our staff. And then I believe it was a Monday 1:30 p.m. community development meeting where we each looked at all of those scores on that spreadsheet. And actually we had very good agreement. I think we made some minor changes to that, but I personally am very happy with the makeup of the task force and don't plan to support any changes to it at this time because I think they're reasonably balanced people. One thing that maybe we didn't make clear is the task force will have the ability to engage outside subcommittees. If there's a specific area they have a great deal of interest in, maybe it's air quality. We have Doug Ryan, who's our former environmental health director, is on the task force, and he is an expert on environmental science and issues, and we have a representative of our health department. But they may want some additional people on there to do some task force, or subcommittees, excuse me, to inform their dialogue. I guess that's what I would add. You probably want to add some things too.
I'll just add that I think that Commissioner Johnson accurately described the process that we went through when we ultimately selected the 15 members of the task force. I know that, for example, people reached out to me and said that there are potential health risks regarding oil and gas development, and why aren't there any, quote, medical professionals that are on the task force? So one of the things that I brought up at our last meeting was what's the process to form a technical advisory committee that might be comprised of people with medical backgrounds who could do some analysis. And so I asked Leslie Ellis, our community development director, to bring that up today, this afternoon, the task force. It's the second meeting of the Oil and Gas Task Force. To ask her to bring that up, and we'll see what the outcome of that discussion was. But I'd also like to know in general, what's the process by which we determine we need one of these technical advisory groups if that expertise is not represented on the actual task force membership. The other thing I would add is that I asked for clarification on if there's a need, how might a minority report be developed, that might reflect some other priorities that some folks might have on the task force. I don't know if that's helpful, Ed.
And maybe just in direct response to the letter that the Board of County Commissioners received from the League of Women Voters, I would just say this. It's not as if we have created a task force that's going to deregulate the county. The county has no regulations in place for oil and gas development at this time. nor have we ever had any rules or regulations in place with regards to oil and gas development. A year ago, the county commissioners at that time, John wasn't even here yet, we said, with the size of well pads now that are sometimes contemplated and the time it takes to drill, I mean, they'll be drilling for literally months now where they used to go in and drill for weeks. We said that seems more like an industrial process that similar in a way to gravel extraction, right? A gravel quarry, that's another mineral extraction actually, is something that happens in the county fairly regularly. Much more frequently actually than, well, not much more frequently, but with probably as significant frequency as oil and gas development in Larimer County actually. And when you go forward with a federal or a state permitting process to start extracting minerals, you have to go through a parallel land use process in Larimer County. It's called special review. And we look at certain things like your hours of operation, where your truck routing is going to go. I don't know. Maybe we do have a significant health department evaluation of that. Yeah, air quality, of course. All of those things that we look at as part of our own local land use regulatory powers. And so the previous Board of County Commissioners actually said, we think that this is a similar type of industrial use that would happen in unincorporated Larimer County, probably should have a similar type of process. And so we've done this a few other times. In fact, we developed horse boarding regulations in the county. We adopted or convened a similar type of task force of comprised of folks primarily inside the horse industry, right? Because who knows how to run that business, and who knows what actually makes for a good neighbor of a horse boarding facility and what makes a poor neighbor from a horse boarding perspective. We had those folks meet for Linda a year and a half, and Linda ran that. It was terrible for her, and we adopted really good regulations out of that. So this task force will have the same charge. They will look at this. They will study these issues. They'll develop what they believe would be sensible regulation. They'll forward those on to our Larimer County Planning Commission, who will take a look at that. That Planning Commission will, and this is our chairman of our Planning Commission, by the way, Jeff Jensen. That's why I'm pointing at him. And Planning Commission will evaluate those regulations. They'll forward them on to the Board of County Commissioners. We can make, for public hearings, of course, there'll be a series of public hearings prior to adoption. And so folks will have many opportunities to be involved. They'll have many opportunities to deal not just with the task force. The task force won't carte blanche make any regulations. The Board of County Commissioners will make the regulations.
I just want to assert that
Go ahead. Assert away.
that things have changed since Senate Bill 181. You're talking about things that were done for horse barns and that, industry knows what industry needs, but our state has just undergone a pretty big change with the nature of Senate Bill 181, and we want confidence that the county honors that, and the fact that the task force, Senate Bill 181 in a nutshell is elevating the
State regulations.
It's state regulations, but public health and some of these impacts have been elevated, and there's not a single medical professional on the task force, and we're talking about public health, and it seems a little bit off, but I hear what you're saying, that there's a lot of process to come and a lot of gates. But
Right. So it's a little ironic, right? The state has raised their level of regulation. Anyone who contemplates development of oil and gas resources must meet those higher state regulations, primarily through public health types of regulations. The county is going to adopt additional regulations where none currently exist. So to me, it seems like on both fronts, enhanced regulatory efforts by local government and by state government.
several doctors applied to the board and didn't get
Steve
any
Johnson's
phone
a
calls.
doctor. I wouldn't trust him to adopt those regulations about public health.
Let me share some thoughts about that. We had initially spent a long time talking about the skill sets that we wanted on the task force, that we wanted people that understood the industry. We wanted people that understood that were concerned about the environmental effects. We wanted people that knew about the land use. So frankly, when I looked at those questionnaires, I didn't look for a predetermined outcome. I wasn't looking to stack it one way or the other. I wanted people that I thought would be objective or open-minded. I don't agree that we need a medical doctor on the task force. I mean, I was a practicing medical person on animals, but I am more interested in the public health perspective, because public health and individual medical health, individual patient health is a very different animal. And yes, doctors deal with the same issues, but I believe that our public health professionals have a lot better training on the epidemiology, on studies of health effects over a large population. So we have two people that are very, very qualified in that area, and I'm very satisfied with that. I appreciate what you said about the state role, because the state role is changing, and we don't really know what that role is going to be in the future either. So I was a little bit concerned about doing the task force now and even wondering if we should see what we'll be able to do under the state regulations, because in the past, as you probably know, there was something called local preemption. In other words, before that Senate bill, local communities were allowed to adopt land use regulations dealing with those land use impacts. We were not allowed to adopt regulations about the operations, the particular operations of the well facility or the drilling facility or the extraction facility at all. That was up to the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and we were not allowed to do anything with that operation. It seems like what you said is now the local communities are going to be given some more of that public health stuff and maybe the ability to address the operations. But we don't know what that is yet. We know what the Senate bill says, but there's going to be probably, I would bet, a 12-month rulemaking process, or maybe even longer, that's going to affect this. So we may even need to, this may be an ongoing discussion, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
In the meantime, we do have the 16 objective review criteria that the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission has put out, and I think that can serve as a guidepost. We just need to decide what we're going to do with it.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on, and it's a changing landscape, and I don't think we know exactly what that landscape is going to look like a year from now, and I think we have to be ready to maybe modify whatever we do based on how the state changes that.
Yeah, and actually one member of this task force is a atmospheric research scientist at Colorado State University. She serves on the Fort Collins Air Quality Advisory Board. The biographies of these folks are on there. There's extensive public health background, and I think when you're dealing with air quality, that is really that's where the rubber hits the road. I don't think it's not necessarily a medical doctor. I think you need people with specific air quality experience and how to mitigate that and deal with that.
And there's water quality implications as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, additional questions? You ready? Yes, sir.
During the process of the task force, obviously you have permits that are being submitted and permits that are pending. Are those being put on hold, or are they being approved as the commission, as the board is moving forward?
Do you want to answer?
I'll offer a perspective on that, maybe see if so we had a preliminary discussion about that recently, because we do have some permit applications that are kind of in the pipeline. And I don't think we came to a conclusion. I think we're going to revisit that discussion about whether or not the county, based on those 16 objective review criteria that the state commission has put out, whether we want to use that as a guideline to offer some kind of a recommendation. Because right now, as I understand it, we have the option, the county can just step aside and let the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission make decisions on these applications that are in the pipeline. Or the county could take a more, in my view, a more proactive role and say, based on these review criteria, this is what we think, allow it to move forward, delay it, perhaps hold on to it if it doesn't meet, some of these criteria.
How can the commission make a decision on some of these permits if they haven't really decided what the guidelines are going to be in the first place?
Well, the rulemaking is going to take, as it's been said, over more than a year's time. But in the meantime, they have established these 16 review criteria, and they're using those to decide those applications that are in the pipeline, what action to take on those. That's my take on it.
So my opinion is the application should be judged based on the rules that are in place at the time the applications were submitted. I don't think it's fair to go to an applicant and say, Well, we have a task force working, and we have the state group that's come up with these criteria, and we're going to apply that to your application. I think you have to have rules that have gone through the hearing process and been adopted, and then you apply those rules fairly to everybody that's applied. That's my opinion. Those applicants that are in the pipeline now are going to be handled differently by the state. We know that. The legislature has authorized that. They've come up with criteria for that. So I think there will be some changes done at the state level. We always have the ability to comment on the particulars of those applications to the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, which is appropriate. We've done that in the past. We've asked for an extension of public hearing, public comment process, but I think they should go through the process the legal framework that we have in place at the time they made an application. That's my opinion on, I think, treating the applicants fairly and legally, in my opinion.
Yes, sir.
If the topic's not off limits, could I ask, what's going on with the controversy surrounding the assessor's office? And what in the world are we going to do? Who's taking charge of that thing to give confidence back to the community that this thing is on the up and up?
Great question. Commissioner Johnson.
I can offer a few little perspectives on that. A couple things to remember. The assessor is an independent elected official, and he has statutory authority in our county over basically that entire process. We run a board of equalization with our county clerk, and we have a role in the appeals process, a very limited role. We do not have the ability to tell the assessor how to run his office or tell him to revalue properties, and I don't think it would be appropriate for us to do that, but we don't have the ability to do that. The other thing to remember is the property valuation process is very, very heavily regulated by the state of Colorado, by the property tax administrator, because it really isn't our process. We collect property taxes, half of which go to the schools. The other quarter go to the municipalities, special districts like hospital districts, library districts, other districts. We only get a quarter of the property tax revenue. So the state and those other entities are also very interested in that process, and they very tightly control how that process is done. So we have a very, very limited role and ability to influence how that process is done. And the best thing to do is comment to the elected assessor that works for you, just like we do. It's his jurisdiction on the process.
What's happening there to me is shameful.
So
mine went up 50.
I have no idea the details.
Yeah.
But all this bickering back and forth,
Yeah.
and then we have a resignation of. To me, it's shameful what's going on, and then we have the resignation of the second in command official, who happened to be the opponent of the elected official, and it just seems like there's just. And by the way, the entire community is in an uproar over the amount of the increase of the assessments.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a bad stain on the entire process.
Organization. And
Mine
organization.
went up 56%, and I looked at the comparable sales in my neighborhood, and I decided not to protest my value because there were some sales in my neighborhood that were just really, really high, really shocked me. We do have the other thing I want to say is we really don't have any role in the property valuation process. What we do have a role in is the mill levy setting. So your value is multiplied by a mill levy, and that figures how much taxes you pay. 2 times in the past, we have lowered the mill levy, given a mill levy credit, because property is reassessed every 2 years. I think what we heard from early on figures is that we were going to see a 12% increase in revenue. Big increases in residential, but actually where we get the biggest chunk of our property tax revenue comes from commercial, because commercial is taxed like 4 times the dollar of value than residents are. So we haven't seen that kind of growth in commercial. So even though we've had a big residential growth, that's a small piece of the pie. We figured our overall growth was going to be about 12%, I think was the figures we saw originally. We don't need that much revenue to operate in 2019. So the board has not officially voted on this, but we have directed our staff to look at a 3rd year of a mill levy credit for next year's taxes. We haven't voted on that, but as far as I know, we're the only property taxing entity in Larimer County that has voluntarily reduced their mill levy, because our board's philosophy is we shouldn't take more money than we need to operate the county. If we have other special needs, one-time needs, capital needs, transportation needs, go to the voters and make that case. But don't overcharge people. take just what you need to do the operating revenue. So that is something we have some control over. Unfortunately, it isn't a big impact on your property tax bill because remember, we're only a quarter of the property tax. So we can only, through our mill levy credit, we can only affect that 1/4 of the pie.
Yeah, so just a couple other things too. If you happen to be, you have to sign up for this. If you're 65 and you've lived in your home for 10 years, you qualify for the senior property tax exemption. I think the first time you gain it, you have to go into the assessor's office, and I think you have to fill out a form. So if anyone meets those two criteria, and they haven't done it, it's worth about $600 or $700, I think, to the property taxpayer if you can do it. We do a senior property tax work-off. If you know a senior in their home who is having a hard time keeping their taxes paid, we'll pay you. The county will actually pay them to come work. We have folks who work at the county fair. We have folks who go work at the reservoirs and do boat inspections and all kinds of different stuff. We have folks work in the treasury and do a lot of clerical types of work. And so there's some ways for us to help, especially seniors, with their taxes. But Commissioner Johnson's right. We're a relatively small piece of your tax bill. But in 2016, in 2018, and I promise you, in 2020, this board is going to give tax relief to those folks here in Larimer County. That's our promise to you. And I think we are the only government in this county that's ever offered that to citizens. Yes, sir. Hey, I'm going to answer your questions all day long. Keep going.
I just think you can appreciate, you're coming to the party right now asking for the voters in the fall to approve a sales tax. And I'm not sure why it's a sales tax, not a fuel, a gas tax. Increase, but
we don't have the ability to do that.
But anyway, so we got that, staring us in the face. We got all this controversy around what's going on with home valuations and property taxes going up. And then we got Poudre School District talking about wanting to float another mill levy override. And so all of these things are kind of working. Your timing isn't very good for wanting to request additional funding. And the controversy surrounding all this just makes it so much worse.
Yeah, we agree with you. I would, if it wasn't for the fact, like the thing I told you earlier. I mean, sitting in traffic for 600% longer to take your trip length. I think I talk to people throughout this community, and they're willing to invest in things that will actually help them. And at this time, and I really believe that this proposal helps people in this county. County commissioners have tried to do a heavy lift on our facility needs. We recently built the new county building in Loveland to replace the old Loveland Library, which is where the county had been for about 50 years. We built that facility and paid in cash. Commissioner Johnson, I think, mentioned that we'd built an alternative sentencing facility to take pressure off our county jail to delay the amount of time that we'd have before we'd have to expand that thing. We paid for that in cash. We expanded our community corrections facility, which is kind of like the halfway house for folks who are transitioning out of the state prison system to get them integrated back into the community. So hopefully they got to have a job and they can find a place to live, have a little bit of money, and when they finally parole out of the state prisons, paid with cash. We're building some fleet shops so that we can maintain good quality service on our roads, make sure we can get our plows out, make sure we can do maintenance. We're paying for those with cash. We've done 2 tax credits on property tax for property taxpayers. This previous Board of County Commissioners, which Commissioner Johnson and I sat on, ended 2 sales taxes early. I've never heard of another government ever doing that. One time, we did it twice. So we're mindful of tax rates. We're mindful of how much money we keep. We want to only take the money that we think that we need to do the things that people expect us to do here at the local government, at the local level. This measure that we're discussing, referring this year, I think it does meet those. It meets that high standard that I would have before I would ever consider referring something to the ballot. I promise you that. I think the situation as it is going to be untenable. It's going to actually result in this county being having a much lower. I won't say being unlivable because that's not true, but it'll result in a much lower quality of life for the folks who live here in the future if we don't do something. So that's why I believe that this is the right solution. And there's never a good time to ask for a tax. Nobody wants to ever pay more tax. I don't want to pay more taxes. Johnson's house went up 56% in value. My house went up 25% in value. And so we all understand that. We all understand where you're coming from. We're going to try to do what we can to try to mitigate some of the effects of property tax increases. We want people to take a good hard look at this and really evaluate not just the taxes, but evaluate what you get for your money, right? I don't know anybody that says, I don't want to pay taxes. Most people say to me, I want to make sure that I'm getting something I think is valuable for my money. It's my hard-earned money. I'm investing it with you folks, with you guys. I want to make sure that I'm getting something for my money. And I encourage you to look at what we're proposing and see if that's not the case with this. I feel like it is, and I hope you will too. Ben?
On a positive note too, we were up there, spent some time with Josh Fudge,
Oh, wow.
Solomon and I, a few weeks back, a month ago or so. And we were impressed to hear that 2012, you guys did a great job. Lou Gator, of course, too, was part of that. But on the 2012 deal was all taken care of by now. And also the 13 flood, I think he showed us about a $17 million leftover carryover left on road or bridge repairs, which is not bad from 5 years ago. So I commend you guys for doing a good job on that.
Yeah, so thanks, Ben. What Ben's talking about is our 2012, the Hyde Park fire, and 2013 were the devastating floods here in Larimer County. Two of the worst natural disasters in the history of our county, and really in the state. The county was able to absorb the costs of flood recovery and fire recovery without asking voters for a new tax. Boulder County, they did have to implement an emergency sales tax. Folks down there are still paying that sales tax to pay for flood recovery. We had such healthy general fund reserves. We were able to work on multiple fronts at one time. That meant we didn't have to finish one project, wait for federal reimbursement, then go to the next project. We worked on multiple fronts at the same time. At one time, we were able to get people in their homes much faster, get them back to normalcy. And we've done a pretty good job of getting through flood recovery. We do have a few bridges in the Big Thompson. That's what Ben's talking about. We had to wait for Highway 34 to get fixed before we wanted to find out what elevation they were going to raise the road bed to. They did some pretty good stuff. They moved at least one lane of the road over onto bedrock everywhere through that canyon, so that hopefully at least to maintain a one-lane road in the event of another catastrophic flood. And so we had to be able to tie our bridges in, and we've been fighting with FEMA a little bit about it. I won't lie to you as far as our federal reimbursement, but yeah, because of management by the county, by county government, and the Board of County Commissioners does deserve a lot of credit for that. We were able to fund that flood recovery without it coming to voters. We were able to do what I believe is an excellent job. The people of Larimer County, the people that work here at Road and Bridge, they did an outstanding job of really making sure that we got that work done. Yeah,
Could
John.
you make a quick comment about the comprehensive annual financial report and the
Oh, yeah.
audits? That's another example of.
Yeah, and I would talk about that. Speaking of financial management, Larimer County just received our, every year as a governmental entity, we have to, we're audited. We have to hire an independent auditor to come in and take a look at the finances of the county. We received a stellar audit on Tuesday from this consultant on our comprehensive annual, what do we call it? The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR. I want to tell you two other things about that CAFR. For 35 years in a row, so I can't even take credit for it. I haven't even been in office that long. Larimer County has been recognized for our excellence in our financial reporting and our record keeping for 35 years in a row. We're one of every year, only 15% of the counties in the country receive this award recognition. We've received it for 35 consecutive years. Wow. It's amazing. Yeah, I know. Last year, 2 years ago, Larimer County actually was upgraded by Moody's to a AAA credit rating. We're one of only, I think, 97 counties out of over 3,000 counties in the United States that holds that high a credit rating. There's only 2 counties in the state of Colorado. We're one of them. We're proud of the record of the way that we deal with finances here in Larimer County. We're really proud of that work. Thank you for mentioning that, whoever did.
Great job. Give them a round of applause.
Oh, come on. Stop, please. We're going to wrap up. We're trying to be mindful of your time. We know you're going to get home and watch Dancing with the Stars. So, no, I don't know. We'll hang around for a few minutes. We're going to adjourn. We'll hang around for a few minutes. Eat those cookies so we don't eat them later. And it was great that we know, hey, there were many things you could have done with your evening. You guys want to say something too? There are many things you could have done with your evening. The fact that you chose to spend them with us means the world to us. I've asked them. They said no. Do you want to make some remarks, John? I'm good. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
You've got us covered.
Okay, very good. Thanks everyone for coming out. Great to see you.